Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Everyone, dear Dhamma friends, this is the third Dhamma talk we are doing under this Dhamma series. So first we have talked about the necessity of the concentration. Then last time we talked about the akusala, kusala and the punya. These things we have been talking about under the prerequisite of the concentration. So this is also a part of that sermons series, but we are talking about the prerequisites of the concentration. So when we are talking about these factors, last time we discussed about the akusalas, how you like preventing from those akusalas and how you do the kusalas, and the punya kiriyavattu, the punyas. So why we have to learn about these things? What is the necessity? Do we have to learn about these things? Do we have to get an idea, understanding about these areas? So what is the reason? As a Buddhist, as a practitioner, our ultimate goal is to achieve the ultimate liberation, or the nibbana, ultimate nibbana. So to achieve that nibbana, why we have to? What is the necessity of a nibbana? Do we have to achieve that nibbana as a Buddhist, as a person? What is the necessity? Because when we think about this, our present life, we know that it is full of sufferings. Everyone knows about the it might differ from person to person, but we know it is full of sufferings. So this is not a thing what you have to tell by someone else. We all experience those kind of sufferings from the birth until we die, until we leave from this life. That is the truth. So what is this life? This is, there is no person, there is no a self or a soul or something. This is a non-self existence. What is the existence? What it contains? It contains the five aggregates. We call the rupakkhanda. We call the form. And the vedana, sanya, sankhara and vijnana. The feeling or the perception and the other mental formations and the consciousness. These are the five aggregates contains in this existence. There is no any soul, there is no any person, there is no any self. But we know there is an existence of these five aggregates. As a human, that is the existence of these five aggregates. So we know this human life is a place where we experience many kinds of sufferings. Even though we go to a divine world or a Brahma world, still it contains sufferings. We have to think about that. Divine world is a place where you have a very luxury life, comfortable life with so many facilities. Yeah, the Brahma world is also the same. So you have suppressed many defilements for a longer period, and you experience a very comfortable place there in the Brahma world. So even though you get a birth in this divine world or a Brahma world, still you are not free from suffering. Why? That is, that suffering is not, you have to describe or define by just the suffering by the feeling, by the body or by the mental suffering. Because wherever you go, there is the existence of this five aggregates. Sometimes it may be one aggregate only. Sometimes 4 aggregates. Sometimes 5 aggregates like what we have now in the human world, divine world. These places we experience these 5 aggregates. So, the Buddha is saying, Sankittena panchupadana-khanda dukkha. As a summary, wherever this existence of these 5 aggregates is there, the suffering is there. This is not just by the feeling. This is not just by the Vedana you like experience by your body or by your mind. Wherever the 5 aggregates are there are 3 like characteristics we call the impermanence, anicca, and the suffering, dukkha, and anatta. This is non-self. Wherever these 5 aggregates are there, these 3 characteristics are there. So we cannot get rid of these impermanence, suffering, and the non-self existence. So, which is these all the aggregates are subjected to these characteristics. So, that is why Buddha is saying, Sankittena panchupadana-khanda dukkha. Wherever these aggregates are there, the suffering is there. The dukkha is following these 5 aggregates. So, even you get a birth in this human world, in the divine world, in the Brahma world, even you are living as a Brahma, still you are not free from, you have not get rid of these 5 aggregates. That means all these, you are subjected to the suffering because the impermanent suffering and the non-self existence is there. So that's why wherever you go, the suffering is there. This suffering of these 5 aggregates can be understood only when you have some level of insight knowledges. Because now we can think, we can learn something, we can listen to Dhamma, and we can just have a inferential rough idea. Okay, wherever the 5 aggregates are there, suffering is there. We are subjected to the suffering. That is an inferential thing, inferential knowledge. We call the Anumana Jnana or Anubodha Jnana. It's a rough idea, but we have not experienced the correct suffering, correct understanding by ourselves. We call the intuitive knowledge, or we call the Pachakka Jnana or the Pativeda Jnana. We are just thinking, okay, we are experiencing the suffering. Wherever we go, the 5 aggregates are there. So we are subjected to these impermanence, suffering, and the non-self existence. So we are subjected to the suffering at the end. So that is the inferential knowledge. But if you want to experience that thoroughly by yourself, by intuitive knowledge, by the Pachakka Jnana, you should develop, you should create something, you should achieve some insight knowledges, which is starting from the Udayava Jnana. We call the knowledge about the rising and the vanishing or the passing away. We call the Udayava Jnana. Starting from that Udayava Jnana, there are few insight knowledges we have to achieve step by step. When someone has these kind of insight knowledges, then he will realize by his intuitive knowledge, we call the Pachakka Jnana, by himself, these 5 aggregates are full of suffering. They are subjected to these impermanence, suffering, and the non-self existence. That is the place where you experience by yourself, by the wisdom, thoroughly. It is now you are not believing that thing because Buddha is said. Now you are experienced by yourself. Now you have a correct knowledge by your wisdom. Now you are believing that because you have experienced that. Wherever the 5 aggregates are there, these 3 characteristics are there. So those 5 aggregates we call the self, we call the me, we call the us. These all the existence are subjected to the suffering. Then only you can understand the liberation why we have to achieve a liberation, why we need a nibbana, why we have to focus on this nibbana, and we should do something effortfully to achieve that ultimate liberation. That is where we realize that it is the most comfortable state, or what we have to achieve to get rid of these 5 aggregates, because in the nibbana there is no any aggregate. Even there is a single aggregate in this nibbana, it is also subjected to the suffering. You are not, you will not get the relief from these 5 aggregates of the suffering. But in nibbana, in this ultimate liberation, there is no any single aggregate. It's a state we can become. So then when someone is having some insight knowledges by doing the insight meditation effortfully, then only he can it is also inferential knowledge, because you can intuitively you can achieve, you can experience a nibbana only by the noble paths. Before that you cannot achieve by your wisdom. You cannot have that nibbana before you generate the noble paths by your consciousnesses. So even though you are developing these insight knowledges, still you are thinking about, you are having a view about the nibbana, but still it's an inferential knowledge. You have not experienced a nibbana, but you know by your experience these suffering of the 5 aggregates and what is the necessity of the ultimate nibbana. Then you are doing something more effortfully to achieve that nibbana, to get rid of the 5 aggregates, which is a suffering. That is why we need to do the vipassana or the insight meditation effortfully until we achieve the at least some levels of insight knowledges. Starting from the Udevaya Jnana, we call the knowledge about the rising and cessation. So when someone is having those insight knowledges, he is somewhat confident about the path, because he has experienced the actual suffering of these 5 aggregates. Now he has that very determination to achieve the ultimate nibbana. He knows that is the only solution to get rid of the 5 aggregates, to get rid of the samsara, to get rid of these suffering. So then he is doing something more effortfully. He is doing the further meditation, and he is trying to generate the noble paths and the fruitions. Until then, we have some kind of a understanding, some kind of a view about the nibbana, about the suffering, about these 5 aggregates, about the impermanence, suffering, and the non-self existence. But it is just an inferential knowledge. We call the anumana jnana. We have just rough knowledge, rough idea about these things, about these facts or the areas. But we have to develop these things. We have to develop some insight knowledges. For that, we have to do the insight meditations effortfully. So we have talked about these things several times. So in order to do the insight meditation effortfully, you should have some level of concentration. We call the samadhi, chittassa ekaggata. We should have some at least some level of concentration. It can be absorption concentration, we call the jhanas, and it can be the access concentration, we call the upachara samadhi, or less than that. You are far behind from the access concentration. But still, if you are doing something to develop the tranquility or the samadhi, samatha, still you are eligible to do the vipassana or the insight meditation effortfully. Then only you can achieve the insight knowledges, then you can experience these what I have said before. So in order to do the in order to achieve the vipassana knowledges, you should do the insight meditation effortfully. In order to do the insight meditation effortfully, you should have at least some level of concentration. But to develop the concentration, even you should have some prerequisites. That is, by doing all the bad things and good things, by allowing all the kilesas, defilements to act in yourself, you cannot develop the samadhi. You cannot develop the concentration. You are not eligible to, because you can do something to develop the samadhi, but it will not productive. You will not achieve the ekaggata. You will not achieve the concentration. So before that, you should become a virtuous person. You have to follow a moral conduct or the disciplinary code, whatever entitled to you. You should protect those precepts, whatever the things you are following. So you have to become a virtuous person first. That is why we have to learn about the virtue, morality, what is the sila. And according to do that, you should have understanding about what should be done and what should not be done. From what kind of things we have to refrain, abstain. So some things we have to realize these are bad things. We should not do these things. We have to abstain from these bad deeds or the akusalas, unwholesome things. And next level is, you have to just you are abstaining is just a kusala. Abstaining is a good thing, wholesome one, because you are not doing the akusalas, you are just abstaining from them, refraining from them. That is not enough. You have to do something, like you have to do the dana, you have to do some meditation, we have discussed about these things, what you have to do, what you have to follow. So that is why we have to learn these things. Our ultimate goal can be a different thing, but without having those knowledges about these areas, we cannot develop this practice. That is why we are just we are discussing about these akusalas, kusalas, punyas and the virtue. But without having a proper understanding about these fundamentals or the basic levels, we cannot go to the higher levels of this spiritual practice. So that is why we are talking about these things. So today we are going to discuss about the virtue, some facts which is related to the virtue. So this is the handout I prepared for that one, for the sermon. So we are going to talk about these topics, what I have mentioned in this handout. What is the virtue? We should have a rough idea about the virtue, what kind of a thing, and the benefits of the virtue. And the foremost classifications, there are many classifications about the virtue, but we are discussing about one foremost classification about this virtue. And when we talk about these classifications, what are the elements of this catupārisuddhi-sīla? We call the fourfold purification of the morality. We call it catupārisuddhi-sīla. What are the elements? And we should have an understanding about this, each and every level of this fourfold purification morality, and how they are mutually interconnected with each other, and how they are supporting each other, and how this virtue become a prerequisite for the concentration. That is the main thing what we are talking about, because before we go to the concentrations, we should know what we have to fulfill, how to become an eligible person in order to develop the concentration. So first we have to talk about the virtue, and at last we have to talk about how this virtue is helping, how the concentration is supported by this virtue or the morality. Then step by step we are going to talk about the first one. Then we can go to the other things step by step. What is the virtue? What is the virtue? This is the foremost step. Virtue in this spiritual practice, this is the foremost step, or the first stage in the spiritual path. And this is the, we can say, the foundation. When we talk about a very huge building, high-rise building, it should have like a very strong foundation. Otherwise, you cannot build that building to a very higher level. It will collapse. Likewise, for a building, it should have a very good foundation, strong foundation. Likewise, when we develop this spiritual training or the spiritual path within ourselves, we should have a very strong foundation that is called the virtue. So this virtue is it's beginning with the volition, we call the cetana. Volition present in one who abstains from killing, abstain from stealing, abstaining from sexual misconduct, those kind of things. These are beginning with the volition, cetana. You are thinking about, so I have to refrain from these bad or unwholesome things. That is called the virtue. And we call that is the varitta-sīla. That is the abstaining part, or the refraining part. You are just avoiding some bad deeds or the unwholesome things. That is called the varitta-sīla. It is the one segment of this morality or the virtue. The other thing is one who fulfills the practice of the duties. The duties, we can say, the duties should be fulfilled towards the teachers, towards the parents, towards the colleagues. So there are many duties as a layperson or as a monk. There are many different duties. So we have to do these. We have to fulfill these things. We cannot avoid these duties. What we have to do, it is the necessity. Because we have to do these duties or responsibilities towards the other persons or the other segments in the society. So that is called the charita-sīla. What we have to follow, that is the one segment of this sīla. The first part is abstaining part, and the second part is the doing part, what we have to follow. And there are few like perspectives we can see, we can understand, or we can analyze this sīla or the virtue. Let's talk about few things about this, some perspectives. The first thing is the cetana-sīla. We call the virtue as the volition. Volition is a cetana. We are defining the sīla. These are not just the classification. We are just trying to define the sīla. When we are trying to define, first we can talk about the cetana-sīla. That is the volition. Virtue as the volition. We are defining the virtue by using the volition, one mental factor. The volition or the cetana present in one who abstains from killing, abstaining from the stealing, abstaining from the sexual misconduct, these kind of things. When someone is abstaining from these things, the cetana, that mental factor, arises within our consciousness. We call that thing as the cetana-sīla, or that is like subjected to the varitta-sīla. We call about the charita-sīla, what we have to follow, what we have to do, the doing part. When we talk about the doing part, about the duties, then someone is fulfilling, someone is following these duties, then there is also a volition. We call the cetana. That cetana also we are defining as the sīla. So, as the charita-sīla we have a volition, and the varitta-sīla we have a volition. So, both these volitions we can define as the sīla. We call that specifically the cetana-sīla. Or that cetana-sīla is can be defined in this way also. The 7 volitions, we have talked about the 10 full course of actions during the last sermon. What are those? The pānātipāta, adinādāna, kāmesu miccāchāra. Likewise, we have talked about 10 full course of actions. We call the akusala kamma patha. So among them, the first 7, excluding the abhijja, the covetousness, and the vyapada, we call the hatred or the ill will. And the last one is the micchaditti, the wrong view. Excluding those things, the first 7 full course of actions, when someone is abstaining from these full course of actions, we call the when someone is abstaining from these first 7 full course of actions, the volition which is arising in his consciousness while he is abstaining from these 7 full course of actions, kamapatas, we call that also cetana sila, because we are defining based on the volition or the cetana. So that is the second way. And we can define the sila in a different perspective, in a different way, like using the cetasikas. The other cetasikas we call like virati. Likewise, we call cetasika sila, virtue as the consciousness concomitant. That means what is like attached with the consciousness, we call the mental factors. Cetana also, the volition is also like a mental factor, the major mental factor. But apart from the cetana, sometimes we are like defining the sila or the virtue by using the other mental factors. Let's talk about this thing. The abstinence that we call the abstinence means the virati. When we are abstaining from something, when we are abstaining from the bad or unwholesome deeds, there is a mental factor arises within our mind in these kusala chittas or the wholesome consciousnesses. We call that the virati, abstinence. We know in the Eightfold Noble Path, samma vacha, samma kammanta, samma ajiva. These are called the virati or the abstinence. When someone is abstaining from these unwholesome things, we call the full course of actions, the bad deeds. This abstinence is there because you are abstaining from something, so the abstinence is there. It's a mental factor arises in that particular consciousness. We call the virati. When someone is abstaining from the killing, the first one, then the abstinence of samma kammanta will be there. That is one, there are 3 abstinences, 3 viratis. So among them, samma kammanta will arise when you are abstaining from killing, when you are abstaining from stealing. When someone is abstaining from lying, then there is also abstinence is there. We call the samma vacha. Samma vacha means one virati, one abstinence. So it will arise in that particular consciousness when you are abstaining from lying, when you are abstaining from slandering, when you are abstaining from harsh speech, when you are abstaining from vain talks. When you are abstaining from these like verbal unwholesome actions, this abstinence of samma vacha will be there. So these abstinences are we define as a sila. It's a different definition. We were talking about this first 7 full course of actions in the cetana sila. So the latter part, the latter 3, we call the non-covetousness and the non-ill will and the right view. We call the anabhijja, abhyapada and sammaditthi. So in these full course of actions, when you are like abstaining from these full course of actions, not like the first 7. During the first 7 full course of actions, we are talking that kamma, the action will be the cetana. The major mental factor will be the cetana, or the volition. In these last 3 full course of actions, the major mental factor will not be the volition, will not be the cetana. When you are abstaining from these covetousness, when you are having the non-covetousness, the major mental factor would be the alobha, non-covetousness, and the when you are abstaining from the ill will, the major mental factor would be the non-ill will, we call the adosa. And when you are abstaining from the wrong view, when you are developing the right view within yourself, the major mental factor will not be the volition, but the wisdom, we call the panya. Sammaditthi means the panya. You are doing that by your wisdom. So in the Cetasika Sila, we can define the Sila by 3 remaining states consisting of non-covetousness, we call the anabijja, and the abhyapada, and the right view, we call the sammaditthi. That is the another perspective. And sometimes we define this Sila by this virtue as restraint or the refrain, abstaining. We call the Samvara Sila. It is 5-fold. The first one is the restraint by the rules of the disciplinary code or the moral conduct. We call that Patimokka Samvara. Patimokka Samvara. You are restraining from the bad deeds or the unwholesome things or these akusala kammas by just following the precepts what you have, what you are following. So that is based on your moral conduct or the disciplinary code. So that is what we call you are restraining by using your disciplinary code based on your moral conduct. That is called the Patimokka Samvara. And the second one is the restraint by the mindfulness. That is we call the Sati Samvara. When you are doing the day-to-day works, duties, you are very mindful about the things what you are doing. So then you will be eligible to like restrain from the akusalas, because you are always focusing what you are doing. So you can easily avoid, you can easily abstain from the akusalas or the unwholesome things. That is called the Sati Samvara, because it is done by the mindfulness. And the third one is the restraint by the knowledge. You can think about whether it is like suitable for you. You can be a father, you can be a mother, you can be a teacher. You are keeping, maintaining a very good reputation in the society. So you can think, is it suitable for me as a father, as a mother, as a teacher, as a reputable person, whether this is suitable for me by your wisdom. Then you think, this is not suitable for me, this is a akusala. When the others get to know about these things, they will blame me, they will insult me, this is not suitable. So it will not be a good thing for my children, for my students, for my colleagues, for my relatives. So by using the wisdom, he tries to abstain, he tries to restrain from these bad deeds. We call that, because it is done by the wisdom, we call the Jnana Samvara, because restrained by using the knowledge or the wisdom. And restrained by the patience. Sometimes if you cannot tolerate something not good, then you tend to do something bad. Because when someone is insulting you, when someone is using harsh words towards you, if you cannot develop the patience within yourselves, then you also try to speak some harsh words. You also try to do something by your body. So because you lost your patience. If you have the patience, if you can tolerate that situation, then you will not go to do these kind of bad things. Like you are not going to do something bad by your verbal actions or the bodily actions. So that is called, based on your patience, you are try to protect yourselves, you are trying to restrain from the bad deeds. We call that the Khanti Samvara. Khanti means the patience. The fifth one or the last one is the restraint by the energy or the effort. Sometimes when the climate is not good, when it is very hot in that area, sometimes the other things, sometimes you may have some sicknesses, you have to tolerate these things sometimes. Otherwise, you tend to do the bad deeds because the environment or your health condition is not good, or the weather is not good, the climate is not good, because you cannot tolerate that situation in a proper way. Then you try to do something bad, try to do something unwholesome, because you couldn't tolerate that by your effort. Sometimes by deploying your effort, by developing your effort, sometimes you can abstain some unwholesome thing. You can restrain from these bad things or the akusalas. We call that is based on the effort. We call the virya. So this is called the virya samvara. This is another perspective we can analyze the sila. And the last one, I'm going to talk about these definitions of the sila. We call the non-transgression virtue, which is based on the non-transgression. We know we all have these anusayas, we call the latent tendencies. We have the tanha anusaya, avijja anusaya, ditthiya anusaya, vichikiච්ඡa anusaya. They are like we can say they are anusayas that they are not coming to the emerging state, but those conditions are within ourselves. We call the latent tendencies or the anusayas, because they are not coming to each and every moment to our mind, because we are not a hatred person every time. We are not a very attached person every time. We don't have that doubtfulness in our mind all the day, because sometimes it comes and sometimes it vanishes. It arises and it will pass away, because we have not eradicate these things. We have not suppressed these qualities within ourselves. So we are with the latent tendencies. Sometimes based on the objects what we are taking from our faculties or the bases, we are taking we are dealing with the outside world. We are dealing with the external objects. So sometimes based on these external objects, based on the things what we are taking through these our internal faculties, we call the ayatanas, sometimes these latent tendencies comes to the emerging state. We call the pariyutthana, because these latent tendencies, the avijjanusaya, tanhanusaya, patighanusaya, they come to the emerging states. How they come to the emerging state? We will have a lobha mula chitta, a consciousness which is rooted with the lobha, with the craving or the attachment. That is the place, that is a moment where this tanha anusaya or the latent tendencies of that craving, which is coming to the emerging state, we call the pariyutthana. When you have a dosa mula chitta or consciousness which is rooted with the hatred, then that is the very moment where the patighanusaya or the latent tendency comes to the emerging state, because each and every unwholesome consciousness is it contains with the amoha, because avijja anusaya all the time when you have akusala chitta or the unwholesome consciousness, you are always the avijja anusaya, that latent tendency comes to the emerging state as the ignorance. So sometimes these attachment comes with the ignorance, sometimes the hatred comes with the ignorance, sometimes the doubtfulness. When you have a vichikiච්ඡa chitta, consciousness with the doubt, when you have that doubt feeling, then also the latent tendency of avijja, ignorance, and the latent tendency of vichikiච්ඡa, doubtfulness, which will come to the emerging state. So this emerging state is always happening. The bad thing is when you tries to do something by your verbal actions and the physical actions, then this transgression state comes, because we call the vitikkama state. Vitikkama state is the transgression state. So the latent tendencies, we are with the latent tendencies. Time to time, based on the objects we are taking from the outside world, these akusalas or the latent tendencies comes to the emerging state, comes to the mind. We are having a consciousness with that, like bad mental factors. So the bad thing is, which violates your sila, which violates your virtue, is when you do something by your verbal actions, by your bodily actions, then it comes to the transgression state. If someone can, if someone can limit these emerging states within himself by not doing something by his body or by his word or the speech, then he is a virtuous person. Even a virtuous person can have these kind of emerging states. That is a normal thing. That is why we need to do some meditation to suppress these defilements, to avoid these defilements come to a emerging state. That is a different task, different process. You have to develop some kind of a meditation. By just having a virtue, just following a virtue, it will not stop these latent tendencies come to the emerging state. But you are protecting yourself by not doing these verbal bad deeds or the bodily bad deeds, by not allowing them to come to the transgression state. We call the vitikkama. So that is, then we call that person is a virtuous person. Even though he is having some akusala chittas within himself in the emerging state, until he did not do anything bad by his body or the speech, still we are like calling him a virtuous person. That is not an obstacle to like maintaining a virtuous life. So that is, we call the non-transgression virtue, because you are just limiting these defilements within yourselves. You are not allowing them to come to the transgression state. That is the virtue as non-transgression. These are the definitions what we are talking about the sila. And the next one is what are the benefits of virtue. When you are maintaining a virtuous life, these kind of benefits you can experience within your life. What are they? To gain great wealth in the present life. If you are maintaining your life in a very good way, in a virtuous way, then you will experience very good wealth, very good facilities within your life, in this very life. That is the first benefit. The second one is to gain great fame and reputation. Because if you are a virtuous person, if you are refraining from the bad deeds and you are following disciplinary code and you are doing something good, then the others will get to know about your behavior. They all talk about you that he is a very good person, he is a virtuous person, he is not doing bad deeds, he is always doing good, wholesome things. So this kind of a reputation will be spreaded throughout the society. Everyone praise you, everyone respect you. That is the second benefit by maintaining a virtuous life. The third one is to be able to appear with courage and confidence in any public gathering. Because you are a virtuous person, so you know, I have not done bad deeds, because you are maintaining a very good life based on your disciplinary code. So you know, I have not done bad things, because I'm following a very good virtuous life and I'm doing these kind of good things. So you don't have any hesitation, you don't have any doubt to go to any public gathering, to any kind of a social segment, because you know your behavior is very good. So without any hesitation, without any doubt, with a very good confidence and courage, you can go to any kind of a social gathering or a social segment. That is the third one you will experience within this life. If someone is not virtuous, if someone is doing bad deed, he has that hesitation. He will not have that courage to go to a public gathering because he is doing something bad. So he has that doubt whether they will insult me, whether they will complain, whether they will ask me to leave the place. So because of these kind of hesitations or the doubts, he is like reluctant to go to these kind of public gatherings. That is, he will experience within this life. For a virtuous person, that situation is not there. He can go to any kind of public gathering without any hesitation or doubt, with very good courage and the confidence. In Dhamma, we call that the Visarada. Behaving as a Visarada, you can go to any public place. The fourth one is to be able to face death with calmness and serenity. Every person has to experience this, the time, the close situation of his death. Everyone has to experience that particular moment. If someone is a very virtuous person, then he will be very confident about his past life, about his life, because he has not done the bad things. He was maintaining a very good, virtuous life throughout his life. The first thing is he has not done bad deeds, because we know when we are at the time of the death, at the moment very close to the death, any karma what we have done in this very life or the past lives, they can emerge, they can come to our mind, and the akusalas can take you to the dugati, we call the apayas, very undesirable places. So that is the bad outcome, bad results when you do these kind of unwholesome things. If someone has not maintained a virtuous life throughout his life, if he has done so many bad, unwholesome things within his life, then he will get frightened. He will get upset when the time of the death comes, when he is very close to the death. Because the first thing is he has done so many bad things. He has the regrets. He has the remorses. He has that regret feeling about this, guilty feeling about his life, about the things what he has done in this life. So it is the first one. And the other one is, the dangerous thing is, because of the things he has done in this life, these akusala kammas can appear at the time of the death and take him to the undesirable places. We call the apayas. So it is the second most dangerous thing what can happen at the time of the death. If someone is a virtuous person, he has done so many bad things, the first benefit is when he is at the time of the death, he doesn't have that regrets or the remorses. He is not repenting about his life because he has not done bad things. He was abstaining from these unwholesome things throughout his life. The second benefit is he has done so many merits, so many meritorious, wholesome things. So these wholesome karmas can arise, can appear at the time of the death, and these good karmas can take him to the human world again, or the higher divine worlds. That is the benefit of doing these virtual, benefit of maintaining a virtuous life. The fifth one is to be reborn at a noble heaven realm of, or at least in the human world at a higher position. Because we were talking about in the fourth fact, at the time of the death. The fifth one, the last benefit is after his death, he will get a rebirth in this human world itself, in a very good position, with very good wealth and with very good parents and all the facilities. Or this virtuous life will take him to the divine world. This is the other benefit. So these are the 5 benefits or the rewards what a person can achieve or the experience in this life. Next we are going to talk about the foremost classifications of the virtue. So there are many, I said previously, there are many classifications about this virtue, but among them I have selected the foremost, the most important classifications about this virtue. That is fourfold classification. We call the fourfold purification of morality. It has 4 steps. We can talk about them. The first one is the virtue of patimokka restraint. Based on your disciplinary code or the moral conduct, you abstain from the unwholesome things and you follow the good things. That is based on the moral conduct what is followed by you. We call the patimokka sangvara sila. The second second category is the virtue of restraint of the sense faculties. We call the ayatanas. We are like protecting, we are guarding our sense faculties. By guarding, we are following, we are maintaining a virtuous life. The third classification, the third segment is virtue of livelihood purification. Because to maintain our life, we have a family. Sometimes lay people have a family. The monks have to maintain have to find the foods, robes, and the dwelling places and the medicine. The lay persons, they have so many requisites. They need dwelling places, and they need a vehicle, they need a job, they need children. So they have to do some thing with their relatives. So many requisites are there. So anyhow, these requisites you have to earn by yourself. Okay, for a lay person, he has to do a job. He has to earn money. For a monk, he has to take them. He had to find these requisites through the devotees. So anyhow, this is the livelihood, because you have to find these things to maintain your day-to-day life. Because in order to maintain your livelihood, day-to-day life, you have to earn these things by using a good way, by using a bad way. That is based on your attitude. So if someone is doing something bad in order to maintain his day-to-day life, in order to maintain a good life, if someone is doing something bad, we call his life or his livelihood is not pure. It is polluted. If someone is maintaining a good life by earning, by finding these requisites in a good way, by not doing the akusalas, we call that his livelihood is pure. We call that virtue of livelihood purification, catupārisuddhi-sīla. The fourth one is virtue concerning requisites. The best word is contemplating about the requisites. You have earned those things, these requisites, in a very good way, because you followed a very good practice in order to achieve, in order to find those requisites. That is good. Your livelihood is pure. It is not polluted by the bad deeds. Even though you have to contemplate at the time of the consumption. That is called the paccaya-sannisita-sīla. You have to contemplate about these requisites. Why I have to take these things? How do I have to consume these requisites? That is called paccaya-sannisita-sīla. Then we have to talk about these each and every segment in this fourfold purification morality. So first one is the virtue of restraint with regards to the disciplinary code or the moral conduct. We call Patimokka Sangvara Sīla. When the virtue of discipline prescribed by the Buddha is called the Patimokka Sangvara Sīla. It can be differ from person to person. We can say for monks, it is the Upasampada Sīla. The greatest or the highest virtue or the moral conduct, disciplinary code in this world, that is Upasampada Sīla, it is protected by the by the monks. And the Samanera Dasa Sīla, we call the 10 precepts, which is specifically entitled for the novices. We call the Samanera Dasa Sīla. So it is for the novices. And for the lay people, the compulsory moral conduct is the 5 precepts, not less than that. But occasionally, time to time, they can observe the higher moral conducts like 8 precepts, 9 precepts, or the 10 precepts. Occasionally, when it is convenient for them, or when it is suitable for them, they can observe them and protect them. So it is based. It can differ. This Patimokka or the disciplinary code can differ from person to person based on his state or their attitude. So someone is like trying to protect or trying to maintain a virtuous life based on this disciplinary code. What is observed by them or what is followed by them is called the Patimokka Sangvara Sīla. We know it is because we have to describe all the precepts, all the all the facts in these disciplinary codes, but it will be a very huge explanation. So I'm not going to discuss about all these precepts here. Just have a rough idea about this Patimokka Sangvara Sīla. It is based on the disciplinary code which is followed by you. By using this disciplinary code, someone tends to try to achieve the purification of the morality or the virtue by using this disciplinary code because of the faith. If someone is having the faith towards the Buddha, and if someone is having the faith towards the Dhamma, or someone is having the faith towards the Sangha and towards the Nibbana, and what is said by the Buddha, he is believing the word of the Buddha. Okay, there is a suffering. We have to get rid of these sufferings. And the Nibbana is the one and only liberation, what we can follow, what we can achieve in order to get rid of these aggregates or the suffering. So he believes, he has that faith, and he believes that ultimate liberation. He believes that in order to achieve that ultimate liberation, there's a path. Without achieving the path, without following the path, we cannot achieve the ultimate liberation. So based on that beliefs, he tries to observe any kind of a virtue or the disciplinary code, and he tries to protect those precepts, all these facts which consist in this disciplinary code. Therefore, the faith is the governing body, governing factor or the main factor which keeps going within this segment. Someone is observing a disciplinary code and someone is following based on the faith. Without having the faith in his mind, he will not observe, he will not accept any kind of a disciplinary code, because he is not believing there is a path. We have to protect the Sīla. We should become a virtuous person in order to fulfill the requirement of this spiritual path in order to achieve the Nibbana. So faith is the governing factor in this segment, in this Patimokka Sangvara Sīla. Then we are going to talk about the second one, virtue of restraint of the sense faculties. This is what we have. We have 6 sense faculties. These are the 6 faculties: eye faculty, ear faculty, nose faculty, tongue faculty, body faculty, and mind faculty. We call the Chakkāyatana, Sotāyatana, those Pali names are there. So, by using these faculties, we are dealing with the outside world or the external world. We are taking the outside objects, external objects, through these faculties. From the eye faculty, we take the visible object, we call the Rūpārammana. And through the ear faculty, we take the audible objects. Likewise, through the nose faculty, we are dealing with the smells. By using the tongue faculty, we are dealing with the taste. We are feeling the tastes. And by using our body faculty, we are experiencing the tangible objects. And by using our mind faculty, we are thinking about some things. We call them the mind objects. So, through these internal sense faculties or the sense bases, we are taking these external objects. We are dealing with the external world. When someone is not protecting these internal sense faculties, whatever the visible object comes to the eye faculty, he takes it. And sometimes he will have some attachment towards this thing. Someone will have the craving towards this like a visual object. It can be with a mind, it can be a living being, it can be a non-living like physical object. Whatever the thing, when someone is not guarding, not protecting these internal sense faculties, these external objects can create some cravings or the objections. We call them he is not happy with the object what he is taking from the eye faculty. The same will happen to the ear faculty. When there is a audible object come to the ear, when someone is having a very good music, what he likes, then he will attach to it. He has that good feeling towards that audible object. When someone is hearing some harsh speech, when someone is insulting him by the word, when he hears, he will have a objection. Then he will have some hatred mind within himself. So if we are not guarding our internal sense faculties based on the external objects we are taking from the external world, that latent tendencies will come to the emerging state. Then sometimes they will come to the transgression state. Then our sīla or our virtue will be violated. Our morality will be violated. So, without protecting our internal sense faculties, we cannot protect our disciplinary code because since we are not guarding the internal sense faculties based on the external objects, the latent tendencies come to the emerging state. If we are not dealing with these emerging states properly with the wisdom, then automatically you will tend to do some bad bodily actions or the verbal actions. Then you will end up with the violation of the moral conduct. So that is why we should focus about this like the guarding. We call the Indriya Samvara Sīla, the restraint of the sense faculties. So we have to focus about these things. We can talk about this thing later, how they are mutually connected, how they are supporting the other segments of the other levels. People who are not conscious and live without mindfulness often have attachment or objections to the objects taken from the eye. When we are talking about the eye faculty, they will have the attachment or the craving or the objection towards the objects. When he likes the external visible object, he will have the attachment or the craving. When he doesn't like the visible object, then he will have a hatred mind, objection. He will have a ill will about this the visible object. Clinging is the evil root called the lobha. Enmity is said to be the evil root called the dvesha. It is the what we use the terms according to Dhamma. If there is attachment or opposition to a certain goal, accordingly there will be a generation of negative thoughts. Because of that, the self-restraint virtue can also be broken. I have explained, if someone is not guarding his sense faculties properly with the wisdom, with the mindfulness, then these latent tendencies come to the emerging state. Because if he likes that object, the lobha anusaya or tanha anusaya come to the emerging state as the lobha cetasika, like the craving. If someone doesn't like that object, then if he is not that mindful enough to observe that object properly, then the patigha anusaya, the latent tendency, comes to the emerging state as the dosa. We call the objection, so or the hatred mind. So then someone is not handling this emerging state properly. First, he didn't protect the internal sense faculties. Then that is the reason to have that emerging state. If someone is not dealing with it dealing with this emerging state properly with the wisdom, then it comes to the transgression state. Then vitikkama happens and he will violate his disciplinary code. That is called by that is explained here. The self-restraint virtue can also be broken. The disciplinary code can also be broken. He will violate he is not a virtuous person anymore. He has to do the according things, the required things to have the purification again. Sometimes the lay person has to observe the 5 precepts again or the broken precept again. For a novice, he has to take the precepts again. For a upasampada monk, for a bhikkhu, he has to do the things which should be done to maintain the purity of the upasampada sīla. So indriya samvara sīla is to be mindful so as not to create vices, the bad things, based on lust and hatred in relation to the appearance perceived by the senses. That is, we have explained. What is the governing factor? The mindfulness. We call the sati. When you are dealing with the external world, when you are taking the objects through your internal sense faculties or the internal sense bases, that is the door. We call the eye door, ear door, and the mind door. These are the doors where the external objects comes to your mind. You are dealing the external world through these internal sense doors or the sense faculties. So when you are not protecting that door, anyone can come inside. In that door, you have to analyze when you take an object, whether this is a good one for me, whether this will help to emerge or the arises, to arise the latent tendencies to the emerging state. So you have to think about that. When you are like dealing with the objects, then you can, if you have understood that this object can lead to the latent tendencies to come to the emerging state, then you can avoid that object. That is the way you have to guard these sense faculties. Otherwise, any object can come into your mind, then they can violate, they can pollute, they can take the latent tendencies to the emerging state very easily if you are not mindful enough. So that mindfulness, the sati, that mental factor is the governing body or the main role in this indriya samvara sīla. So if someone is developed, if someone has developed with the mindfulness, so he will have a very good Indriya Samvara Sila. When the Indriya Samvara Sila or the restraint with the sense faculties, then it will be helpful to maintain a very good level of the moral conduct. Then it will support to get the good level of moral conduct. He will be a virtuous person. The third one is the virtue of livelihood purification. We call the Ājīva-pārisuddhi-sīla. For monks, it's a different things. We can talk about the lay people. For lay people, Ājīva-pārisuddhi is refrain from the bad occupation. That is the foremost thing, because every lay person has to follow some kind of occupation to earn money, to achieve these requisites. So in order to do that, for lay people have to have a occupation. Those occupation, foremost thing is he has to refrain from the bad occupation. What are the things Buddha admonished not to do for a lay person? The first one is there are 5 bad occupation admonished by the Buddha not to do for a lay person. The first one is the business in weapon, that is the sattavanijja, and the business in human beings, like you deal with the slavery, and the business in the meat, business in intoxicants, and business in poisons. Those things are harmful for the others. Those things are related with the akusala kammas. So Buddha is admonishing the lay people not to do these kind of occupation, because they are obstacle to maintaining a good, meritorious or a virtuous life. So the foremost thing is you have to avoid these bad occupation first, as per the Buddha's admonishment. That is also Ājīva-pārisuddhi. Even though you are following occupation, you are doing occupation which is not related to these 5 bad occupations, because not related to these things, not combined with these any kind of a bad thing. You are doing a very good occupation in order to earn money, in order to maintain your day-to-day life, in order to provide the requisites what you need. But even though you are practicing, you are doing a good occupation, sometimes you can do something bad, like you can do the bribing, you can do some frauds, you can make bad wrong documents. So these things can be done in order to achieve, in order to earn some more money. Even though you are not doing this bad 5 occupation, even though you are doing a good occupation, while you are doing this, sometimes you may experience there are some places you can do something bad in order to earn some money more. You have to refrain from these also. Otherwise, your Ājīva-pārisuddhi-sīla will be polluted, will be violated. Even though he is doing a good occupation, which is not included in these 5 categories, he should not do the unwholesome deeds like bribing, slandering, frauds, scams, etc. There are many things you can do bad in order to achieve, in order to earn some more money, or to get a higher position in your institute or the company. So they should not be done, because your Ājīva-pārisuddhi-sīla will be violated. For a monk, it's a different thing, because for a monk, they have only 4 requisites. So in order to provide these 4 requisites, there are things what we can do and what we cannot do. So I'm not going to discuss detailedly about these things. I'm focusing about them for the lay people, how they can maintain, how they should maintain this Ājīva-pārisuddhi, because in order to maintain the livelihood purification. The fourth one, before we go to the fourth one, what is the governing body? What is the governing factor for this ājīva-pārisuddhi-sīla? That is the virya. Because that is, you can easily find more money by doing bad deeds. When you are doing these 5 bad occupation, which is abundant by the Buddha, which is admonished by the Buddha not to do. So easily they can earn money by just selling the meat, by selling intoxicants, by selling the poisons, selling the drugs. These kind of things you can do very easily and find many more money, and you can become a rich person within a very short period. Because it is sometimes you can do some illegal things to earn more money. So if someone is not doing this bad occupation, only he is following a good occupation, and during this occupation he is not doing any bribing, doing frauds and preparing bad documents, scams and slandering to get higher positions. He is not doing anything within this occupation. It is very difficult because he is not having more money. He is having only the very little kind of money as the what you call from the company. That is not enough. Sometimes it is not enough for him to maintain his life. He may have several kids, and he may have a very bad situations in his family, in his house. He has to develop, he has to construct a house, he has to pay other rent bills, other bills. He has to undergo many difficulties during his personal life. But still, he is maintaining a good purification level for his livelihood. It is based on the effort. If he loses this effort, he tends to do bad things just to earn more money, just to take a higher position in the company. This is what we call the base on the effort. Without effort, you will tend to do some bad things within this livelihood, within this process of earning money. So that is why this ājīva-pārisuddhi-sīla, or the purification of the livelihood, is based on the governing factor will be the virya, or the effort, or the energy. The fourth one is the virtue of concerning, or the contemplating about the requisites. We call the paccaya sannisita sīla. By using the wisdom, contemplate about the requisites at the time of their consumption. Because now you have gathered, you have accumulated the requisites, what you want, what you need for your day-to-day life. That's okay. You have not done any bad thing in order to accumulate those requisites, in order to fulfill these requisites. You have done a very pure thing, you have maintained a purification level of your ājīva-pārisuddhi-sīla. Your livelihood is pure. But even though you have not done anything bad in order to provide or to fulfill these requisites, but at the time of the consumption, if you are not contemplative enough, if you are not using the wisdom at the time of the consumption, sometimes, let's take an example, when you are eating something, if you are not contemplating about this requisite, why I have to eat this thing? What is the main purpose of having food? Just to maintain my life, just to have a healthy body, healthy condition in my life, just to quench my thirsty or the hunger. These are the main requisites, main goals. What you have to take food. These are the needs. These are the things you have to focus when you are taking the food for your requisite. If you are not contemplative enough, you are not thinking about the actual need, actual requirement, why you need to take food. So then you will be focusing not about the real requirement, not about the maintaining life, not about maintaining a healthy body and mind, not about maintaining a very a strength in your body and like quenching your thirsty and the hunger. You are not focusing about this main requirement, actual requirement. You are focusing about the taste. You are focusing about the amount what you can eat. So like with the craving, with a greedy mind, you tend to consume these food. Then the akusala chittas, the lobha, the craving, attachment will come to your mind. So you are consuming these requisites by using the akusala chittas. That is not a good thing. So you have to contemplate about these things. Otherwise, even though your livelihood is a pure one, is a good one, but if you are not protecting, if you are not contemplating about the real requirements of these requisites, then you are dealing with the akusala chittas at the time of the consumption. Then it is a not good thing, and your purification of this paccaya-sannissita-sīla, the virtue of concerning requisites, is not pure. It will be violated. That is why I have mentioned, by using the wisdom, contemplate about the requisites. But you have to contemplate, you have to think about what are the real requirements to use these requisites. What are the real needed things what I have to fulfill by using that particular requisite. They can be food, they can be clothes, they can be like the other medicines, they can be dwelling places, they can be transportation facilities. So these everything you can contemplate at the time of the consumption, at the time of the accumulation. So in these both situations you can contemplate about the real requirements of these requisites. At the time of their consumption, then the use of the requisites is purified by the reflection, by the contemplation. What is the governing factor in this part, in this concerning requisites or the contemplating part? That is done by the wisdom. We call the paññā. Because without using the wisdom, you cannot focus about the real requirements of these requisites. Then, without using the wisdom, when you are trying to consume these requisites, food, clothes, dwelling places, medicine, whatever the requisite, then you tend to focus about the other unnecessary perspectives or the things like the taste, like the color, like the social reputation. These things you are trying to focus, then you are like the latent tendencies come to the emerging state, then you are consuming these requisites with akusala chittas. That is not a good thing. That's why the wisdom is needed. The governing factor for this paccaya-sannissita-sīla is paññā, wisdom. If you are using the paññā, if you are using the wisdom, if you are contemplative enough by using this wisdom, then you are not dealing with the requisites with akusala chittas. Always the wisdom get the main role, enact, and wisdom will not allow akusala chittas to arise at the time of the consumption. So these are the four main segments in this fourfold purification morality. So we have discussed all the things, all the four segments in this fourfold path. Then we are trying to discuss about the mutual connection, how they support each other, each segment between these four factors or four segments. How we understand about this thing. When something is done, when let's talk about from the fourth one, the dealing with the requisites at the time of the consumption. If you are not focusing enough, if you are not contemplative enough with these requisites, then you tend to focus about the unnecessary sides of this requisite. like what I have said, like the taste. Then you are trying to focus about the taste. Then the greediness come. Then the attachment or the craving towards these foods come. Then you try to take as much as you can. You are not focusing about the amount, what is actually needed for you. You are focusing about the taste, and you try to grab, you try to eat as much as you can, because you are try to consume more. The amount will be higher, because sometimes it will be uncomfortable when you finish your meal, because you are not contemplating about the real amount what is needed for your existence, what is needed for your actual requirement. So you are focusing about the greediness or the taste, then you are trying to take more food and beverages to fulfill your greediness. Then sometimes you have to go to very luxury places, like the star-oriented places. Sometimes you are going to the other countries abroad just to quench your greediness, just to experience some new foods, some new expensive food items or the beverages, because you are not focusing about the actual requirements of the food. What is the actual requirement to maintain your life, to maintain the healthy standards or the healthy condition in your mind and the body. You have to maintain your strength in your body in order to do the day-to-day life, and just to quench your thirsty and the hunger. These are the real requirements. If you are not focusing about these real requirements, you are going to very expensive places just to experience these different kinds of foods, just to quench your greediness, just to quench your craving. For those kind of requirements, then you need more money, because when you want to go star-oriented places, hotels, just to experience some new categories, new kinds of foods and beverages, you need to earn some more money. Then sometimes you have that feeling, you have that urge to go different countries just to experience their foods, just to analyze, just to explore some food traditions, because you are not focusing about that real requirement of the food. So in order to fulfill those requirements, because now you are focusing about the taste, the different traditions, different amount what you can take. So you need more money in order to spend those places, in order to spend on these different food tradition, different star-oriented expensive foods. So you need to earn more money. Then your requirements are very complex. Then in order to earn more money, sometimes you tend to do some bad deeds while you are doing your occupation. Sometimes you tend to do the bad occupation. Sometimes even though you are doing a good occupation, within that good occupation you try to do some bribing, you try to do some scams, you try to do some slandering just to take some higher position, promotions within your company, and just to take some more money, because your requirements, your requirements are very complex, because you are not focusing about the real requirements. So to earn more money, you may violate your catupārisuddhi-sīla. Your livelihood will not be pure. If your livelihood is not pure, because you are always try to earn more money just by doing some bad deed, unwholesome things, then your mind is not pure. Your mind is not dealing with wholesome things, because always that unrest is there, that frightenness, that you are frightened about the things what you have done, So you are not in a very happy position because you have done something bad within your company, within your job. So you have done some scams. You are frightened whether this will be revealed, whether the others, the higher positions, the boss will get to know what you have done within the company. That unrest is there. He is always like suffering from the things what he has done just to earn more money, whether the colleagues will get to know what you have done. So this unrest, suffering, the uncomfortability is there because you have done bad things just to earn more money. Then you are first your catupārisuddhi-sīla is violated. Then what happened? Because of that, you wanted to earn more money. Your catupārisuddhi-sīla is violated. Then because of that, because of the violated catupārisuddhi-sīla, that unrest, that suffering, that uncomfortability is there. Then you cannot focus about the indriya samvara sīla. You cannot guard, you cannot protect, you cannot call mindfulness enact in your mind. You cannot get the help of the mindfulness to guard, to protect your internal sense faculties. Then you are dealing with the external world with unrest, with the suffering, with that uncomfortability. You are not that convenient condition because mindfulness cannot do the perfect job. Your sense faculties are not guarded, not protected. Any defilement can come because of the objects you are dealing with, the external world. Then at the end of the day, your indriya samvara sīla will also be violated. Then what would happen when the violated indriya samvara sīla is maintained? Your disciplinary code is in a danger state because at any time you can do some bad deeds or the verbal unwholesome things, and your disciplinary code, because the patimokka samvara sīla, will be violated. So because you are not focusing about the paccaya sannīsita-sīla at the time of the consumption, the result was your catupārisuddhi-sīla is violated, polluted. Then because of that, your indriya samvara sīla is vulnerable and it is polluted. It is not pure. Because of that, your patimokka samvara sīla also vulnerable, and at the end of the day, it is violated. If you are focusing about the real requirements of your requisites, what you are using for your day-to-day things, then you are wise enough, you are contemplative enough about the requisites, what you are dealing, what you are using. If you are focusing about the real requirements of these requisites, then you know that you don't have to go for expensive things. You don't have to go for expensive foods, expensive places, just to quench the thirsty, just to quench the hunger, just to have that strength in your body, that healthy condition in your body and the mind, just to maintain your life. You don't have to spend more money. You don't have to go to expensive places. When you talk about the clothes, when you talk about the dwelling places, it's the same. You know what is the actual requirement, why I need that requisite for me, for my day-to-day life. So he is contemplating about that requisite. Okay, that is the real requisite. So I don't have to spend more money about this thing because actual requirement is this. So I don't have to spend much thing. I don't have to go for expensive things in order to quench, in order to fulfill my actual requirement. Then his life is very simple. It is not a very complex things. Then he can easily avoid the bad things when he is doing the livelihood. He not tends to do the bad things or the unwholesome things while he is doing a bad occupation, because he has that happiness. He had that simple lifestyle within himself, so that at a very low level of income, he can survive, he can maintain his life. So he will not tend to do bad things while he is doing his occupation. Then because he had the good level of the Paccaya-sannisita-sīla, then his like what we call the ājīva-pārisuddhi-sīla, the livelihood will be pure. It will not be violated. It will be protected by the Paccaya-sannisita-sīla. Then what would happen if the ājīva-pārisuddhi-sīla, or the livelihood, is protected? Then he is not doing any bad things while he is doing the occupation. He doesn't have that unrest. He doesn't have that suffering. He doesn't have that doubt about his occupation. He has that courage or the confident happiness within his mind. So he can focus about his internal sense faculties while he is doing day-to-day things, day-to-day duties, while he is doing the occupation, while he is dealing with the family, while he is dealing with the other social segments. So because he is a very happy person and he doesn't have that unrest, he has that calmness in his mind. So he can focus, he can let the mindfulness to do the job, to protect to guard his internal sense faculties. So by having a very good level of the purification level of the livelihood, automatically then he can protect, he can maintain a good level of sense faculties. He can achieve the virtue of the restraint with regards to the sense faculties. When he has a good level of indriya samvara sīla, then always he is trying to deal with the external world with the mindfulness. Then automatically there is a very good protection for the disciplinary code. He can maintain a very good moral conduct. He can maintain the morality or the virtue in a very good level, because always he is mindful enough to deal with the external world. With the whatever the object comes through these internal sense faculties, he will not tend to do the bad things by using his body or the verbal actions. Then at the end of the day, his Patimokka Samvara Sīla will be protected. Those are the mutual connections in between these four segments. So concerning requisites is governed by the wisdom, and it helps to improve the livelihood purification I have described. Livelihood purification is governed by effort, and it helps to improve restraint of the sense faculties. When the restraint of the sense faculty is governed by mindfulness, it helps to protect the disciplinary code. Protecting of the disciplinary code, because the Patimokka Samvara Sīla, when it is governed by the faith, and then the virtue will be pure. That is how these each and every segment supports to the previous segment, how they are mutually interconnected in order to have a very good level of the morality. Then we are going to talk about the final stage, how the virtue becomes a prerequisite for the concentration. When you have a great level of the purification of the sīla, morality, then it helps to achieve the freedom from remorses. We call the avippatisāra. You will not have the regrets or the repentings about what you have done or what you have not done. Because of the sīla, virtue, you will have the freedom from remorses. When you have free from remorses or the repentings, that it generates the joy within yourself. When you have that pāmojja or the joy, the rapture, the joy is the initial stage of the happiness, the young age or the initial stage. Rapture is the very like the developed happiness or the strong level of the happiness. Then when you have the pāmojja within your mind, the rapture will arise within your mind. When you have rapture or the pīti in your mind, that passaddhi or the serenity will arise in your body. Your body will have that like good, that comfortable feeling, And when the serenity or the passaddhi is there, then the pleasure, the sukha will arise within your body. That comfortability will be there. The pleasure. When you have the pleasure, the concentration will be there. Your mind tends to concentrate about the object. About when you try to do meditation, you can easily get that tranquility stage. You can easily come to the access concentration levels. You can easily come to the absorption levels or the jhanas. So because of the pure sila, because of the sila, you get the vipatisara, freedom from remorses. Then you feel, you get the joy or the pamujja. Then the rapture arises, the piti. Then the serenity, the passaddhi arises. Then because of the passaddhi, pleasure or the sukha arises. Then because of the mental comfortability and the bodily comfortability, then your mind tends to concentration. Mind can easily concentrate about the meditative objects. That is, after when you have the samadhi, the other higher levels will be achieved. But I'm not going to talk about these things because we have not described the higher levels of the spiritual practice. So I wanted to explain how the virtue become a prerequisite for the concentration. That is the last topic I wanted to describe. That is how the virtue helps to, by the step by step, how the virtue become a prerequisite, like how the virtue, how the morality helps to develop the concentration within yourself, how the samadhi arises. So with that thing, I'm going to end up the today's sermon. So we have talked about, as a summary, we have talked about what is the virtue, some aspects, some perspectives, some definitions we have talked. We discuss about this sermon, and we talk about the benefits of the virtue and the foremost classification of the virtue, and what are the elements of that foremost classification. We call the fourfold purification of morality. What are the segments? What are the elements? And how they are mutually interconnected? How they support each and every segment in order to maintain a good morality or the good virtue. And finally, we talk about how this virtue become a prerequisite. Why we need sila to develop the concentration. So this is the summary, what we have talked about, what we have discussed within this Dhamma sermon. So we have accumulated so many merits. I have accumulated the Dhamma Desana merit, and you have accumulated Dhamma Savana, listening to the Dhamma, and both of us, we have accumulated the Yoniso Manasikara. We were like thinking about the Dhamma facts in a very good level. So these merits we should send. We can transfer these merits to our teachers who ordain us, to our parents, and other teachers who are teaching our Dhamma, teaching us the Dhamma. So all these merits may be a very good and strong cause to achieve their wishes and the ultimate Nibbana as they expect to achieve. And also we should transfer all the merits to our relatives, to our friends who have passed away and who are expecting these kind of merits. May they rejoice these merits, and may this will be a good cause to achieve their ultimate liberation as their expected ways. And also we should transfer these merits to all the devas or the brahmas who protect us, who protects you, and who protect this Sambuddha Sasana and the world. And may all these merits, may all the devas and brahmas rejoice all the merits, and may they have good desirable results, and may this will be a great cause for them to achieve the expected paths and fruitions and ultimate Nibbana. And finally, I would like to wish all the listeners who have joined for this Dhamma sermon, and may you all have these merits in order to achieve a desirable results in this very life, and have a good, healthy mind and body in order to practice this Dhamma within this life. And may these merits will be a great cause to achieve the desirable lives until you achieve the ultimate Nibbana. And may these all merits will be a great cause to achieve the expected paths and fruitions and achieve the ultimate liberation or the ultimate Nibbana for all of you. And may all you have the blessings of the triple gems.